Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's webinar, our Farming Realities webinar. We're excited to have you here with us today. We're excited for this panel. We're excited for our moderator this evening. The goal of this panel this evening is to provide new and beginning farmers information for folks that may be interested in engaging in farming. And so we have some great folks here that have some wonderful experience as new and beginning farmers, and we hope that the information they share can benefit you in starting your own farming practices. And with that being said, I will turn it over to our moderator for the evening, Margie.
Thanks, Marcus. Yeah, I just want to echo, we're so excited that so many people wanted to be part of this panel. And we're really excited to get some of their experiences to y'all. There's been a huge uptick in interest around farming. And with that comes this responsibility to tell real stories of farmers and how they're adapting and what their businesses are like. So thank you so much for being here and listening to a little bit of what they have to share. I'm Marguerite Green. I work at Sprout Nola, and Sprout is a farmer and gardener technical assistance and training organization. We are partners in the Grow Louisiana program with LSU, Crescent City Farmers Market, Grow Acadiana, whole host of other wonderful organizations. So I'm gonna introduce our panelists tonight. We've got people from all over the state and then also in our food shed over in Mississippi. And I guess I'll call on you guys. So a little bit of housekeeping, because we are on a computer instead of in real life. I think I'll probably be a little bit more teacher mode and call your names, which might feel clunky, but I think it'll help us from talking over each other a little bit. So yeah, I guess without further ado, I'm going to go over to my left and ask Alisha, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Alisha Delahoussaye, and I have a farm in Sunset, Louisiana. We recently moved to this property about a year ago, and I'm farming on about a 1/4 acre, generally by myself with some part-time help. And I'm primarily producing cut flowers and some vegetables, selling at farmers market and through a bouquet subscription service and to some local stores.
Awesome. And then I'll also say for everyone who's participating as an attendee, you can throw your questions into the chat. We might not have time to do any of those extra questions at the end, but I will share them with all of our panelists. And if someone's compelled to answer something, we can send out emails afterwards. So I'm going to throw it to Allison. Allison, will you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Margie. My name is Allison Guidroz. My husband and I have a farm. It's called Fullness Farm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We started in 2015 with our farm. Before that, we were interns on farms. And I just finished getting my master's degree at LSU in horticulture, looking at the soil on our farm. So if anybody wants to nerd out on soil, happy to talk about that. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. This is a really exciting program. So thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And then I'm going to ask Jonathan, will you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jonathan Pekarsik, and my wife and I, Sevena, we run Amorphous Gardens, which is a no-spray farm. We've been operating since 2010. We're outside of Jackson, Mississippi. We sell in New Orleans, Jackson, and around the communities where we live. We sell vegetables and cut flowers.
Awesome. And then last but certainly not least, Tom, will you introduce yourself?
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Nguyen, and I'm with the VEGGI Farmer Cooperative, which is out of New Orleans East, and we service. We grow on less than an acre out there. We actually share with another farmer, and we mainly focus on providing work for our community. You know, which VEGGI started after the BP oil spill, so. Our community, a lot of them were the fishing and Gulf oils industry, so they were left without work after the events, and VEGGI was formed to help provide work and vocational training for them, find some extra funding for and work through that.
Awesome. So you'll see we have actually kind of like a breadth of different kinds of farming experiences. on this call, and then also from a lot of different places. So I want to jump in and see kind of what brings us together. What is a universal question, which is what motivated you to get into farming? And I am, even though I consider many of the people on this call like friends, I don't actually know that I know the answer to this for everyone. So Allison, would you go ahead and kick us off? What motivated you to get into farming?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So both my husband, we were not married at the time, but when we were in college, we both got interested in farming and gardening. We started college 2007, 2008. And I think just that, you know, coming to college, you kind of start thinking about big world stuff. There was a big financial crash, kind of similar to like our current season, you know, and a lot more movement towards local food, I guess, but I think just personally it moved me to local food. So I started thinking about kind of these big picture, like what is a financial crash? How does it happen? And it just freaked me out. And it just made me feel very, very out of control. And so I think part of, like, for me, gardening was like something that I could control and something that I felt like would always have value. And I was starting to realize just some of what was going on in the world that I didn't consider as good, you know, and was like, made me really uncomfortable. And I felt like gardening contributed to good, and it didn't contribute to like the bad that I saw. And so I think personally it was, you know, just something that I could do to contribute good. And then I just like fell in love with it. I mean, the beauty of it, the miraculous, getting to see a seed germinate and grow, and you get a harvest and you cook it. And I love to eat, and the garden had the best food I'd ever eaten. And Margie knows that I started in undergrad and working in community gardens with Margie. I was their first intern in some community gardens long time ago. And then so just to see the real connections that you make in the garden, that sold me a whole nother level. Seeing kids eat dirty radishes sold me on another level. And then it's almost like a love affair. Like it just kept, you know, I was wooed. And it also fit my personality that I didn't really go into realizing it, but I've always liked being active. I've always liked doing a lot of different things. I've always liked being outside. I've always liked people. And so it fit my personality. And luckily, the person I was dating and married was equally as enchanted. So I think that was how we kind of got in, and so happy to do it. It's amazing.
Thanks so much for that. Jonathan, how about you? What motivated you to be a farmer?
Yeah, both my wife and I, we thought we were going to be academics, and we spent most of our 20s in graduate school and traveling across the country, and we participated in farmers markets everywhere we went, and we loved that community. And I was in a PhD program at the University of Minnesota, and I was studying sociology of food, and I didn't want to go to my office and work. I wanted to be in my garden. And like Allison said, it was in 2008 when that occurred. And I didn't know what was happening economically in the world, but my wife lost her job, and it was in the summer, and I just said, I knew I didn't want to do this for my life. And so we moved back to Mississippi. And we looked for land for 2 years. We knew we wanted to do it. And it's very similar. You know, you become addicted to it. You love it. Nothing in the world that I'd want to do except this. And that's all the motivation that I have. And we've been lucky enough to make enough money the past decade to keep doing it. But it's kind of a series of events that we were in that community. We consumed the food that you know, local communities produce wherever we lived, and we fell in love with it.
So what I'm hearing is financial crashes lead to.
It's going to be another, I think, a wave of new farmers. I think it's
definitely.
It goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I completely agree. So Tom, would you answer the same question? What motivated you to start working in agriculture, to start farming?
Yeah, so for me, I've only been working with VEGGI for the last 4 years, and like culturally, I've always been exposed to like gardens and vegetables. Growing up as Vietnamese, you know, my grandpa always had fruit trees in the back, and like herbs growing everywhere. But the last, like when I just come back from, I'd studied visual arts, so that was what I majored in. And then I took a couple years to go travel abroad and work, and just to experience Vietnam. So I worked in Vietnam for a little bit as well. But when I came back here, I was also just looking for a job, and I moved to the city, New Orleans. I grew up in Hammond, which is like an hour away. So I've always been intrigued by New Orleans. So when I got older and able to make the move, I made it there. And as part of it, I was looking for a job, and I kind of just fell into this job with VEGGI, but it just opened me more and connected to my culture, as like VEGGI is a Vietnamese American organization. So I was exposed to that. I was able to speak Vietnamese with my growers and the elderly people that are involved in the farm. So it's just, I saw that what they were working and like who they were supporting. So I just really wanted to continue to be involved, but also I just also wanted to grow my own food, seeing how where that food processes come from. It just made me want to be able to learn more about it and continue to grow. So that's like what I've been doing the last 4 years, working with VEGGI, trying to expand that throughout New Orleans. So.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And Alisha, I think you know the question by now.
So I'm originally from Baton Rouge, which is it's about an hour and a half from where we're farming now. And not many of you know this, but I actually went away to college in Arkansas for a couple of years. And I was studying philosophy and like getting prereqs to go to law school, and did that for about 2 years, and kind of started working in a community garden there that we had started, and decided to transfer back to LSU in Baton Rouge and completely switched gears into the horticulture program. Took my first gardening class that fall, and just kind of flew from there. And graduated in environmental horticulture from LSU. But the beginning of my life, like my childhood, is really where all those roots started growing, because my dad worked for a farm supply when I was a kid. And so I was like visiting people's farms like as a small child, and like seeing all these different systems and ways of growing, and seeing people raising livestock on small and big scale. Like we always had a garden when I was growing up. My aunts were like really great growers, and I kind of got away from all that in high school, and found my way back to it in college. But I was trying to figure out how I was going to make a living, like, and what I wanted my life to look like. And I found out very quickly that I did not like being inside. I make this joke all the time that I'm like a plant. Like I need to photosynthesize. I need to be outside. I need to be like digging around. And just the changes that happen over time on a farm, they happen by the minute, you know, so there's always a challenge. There's always something interesting happening to look at or to discover or to figure out. And all those things combined, you know, I was like very enthralled with the lifestyle and the ability to like create food and create community and all of that within the thing that I was proud to like do every day, and be able to like make a living for myself at the same time. So what really sealed the deal was meeting my husband at a farming conference. And that was years ago now. And the joke is that he was so enthralled with me, it was like love at first sight, and I didn't know who the hell he was. Until several months later when he came to the farmer's market and asked me on a date. But, that like kind of sealed the deal for us to start our own farm. So, yeah. I kind of went off topic, but I kind of tied back into it's a financially driven decision and a lifestyle decision. And I mean, it's not an easy choice to make. And people really think that it is just a lovely place to frolic and have a wonderful life. And it takes making a decision to do it. And it's not an easy one. So.
Yeah, I think that really artfully pulls us into the next question. And also I think over years of talking to farmers about this exact question, one of the things that constantly comes up that I think we're all talking around is like, you're not going to thrive farming if you could thrive doing anything else. Like it has to kind of like be a part of you, because it like those relationships, there's the up and the down, right? So speaking of which, what are the challenges and barriers faced by new and beginning farmers? So I'd love to hear from you sort of personally what your challenges and barriers were starting, and then also if you feel so inclined to speak about this, and it's okay if you feel like it's out of your wheelhouse, but sort of thinking a bigger picture, not just what happened to you, but like what you see as the challenges that are facing new and beginning farmers. Because we all bring something to this, when we all start farming. I don't know that I mentioned I am a farmer. I'm a part-time farmer. I'm not a full-time farmer. But we all bring something to the table when we start a farm, right? And so some of us have different challenges than others. So thinking about the personal, but also like kind of what is the broader experience for new and beginning farmers. And I'd love to start with Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind sharing your thoughts.
I mean, I think universally the three are going to be lack of money, lack of quality land, and lack of equipment. And everyone's going to have one of all of those three to a certain degree. And the way that I rationalized it, when we didn't have a lot of money to start a farm, our land is terrible, and we didn't have any equipment to start. We basically like shoveled and used scythes our first year. And there's always going to be a farmer that has more or less than you. And to me, the way I rationalized those three things was that when you have less of those three things, it's a longitudinal process, right? So it's long term. And so you have to rationalize it and say, you're not going to make money today, tomorrow, next year. It's over your lifetime. And I think that goes back to the psychology of when you start a farm. It's that you have to change your mindset, and you have to eliminate expectations and diminish anticipation. Acknowledge you're going to fail and fail and fail and fail. You're going to work more than a CEO and get paid less than a minimum wage laborer. I don't know. I mean, a lot of the challenge. It's a lot of, to me, the financial challenges actually became less important than the psychological obstacles when you start a farm. And going back to what Alyssa said, it's a lot. You have to absorb the lifestyle of farming. And if you weren't in a farm family, yes, I grew up with a family that gardened and lived in the country, but that's not farming. And you have to change your life if you're going to farm for a living. And you have to just absorb that. The other thing I'd say, other than like psychologically, like letting your ego go, is I think the biggest thing that I learned very quickly was you have to be very cognizant and perceptive of markets, whether that's global markets or local markets, and understand what's happening within them. And then basically become a niche finder, whether that's based on quality, price, or what type of variety of food that you grow. And just really watch markets. But that's, some of the challenges and obstacles that we face.
Yeah, thank you for that. Would you give us some insight on what you see as those challenges and barriers facing you or others?
Yeah. So for me, I actually, when I made the decision to focus more on farming and choosing that path to go down and develop, I had struggles with my parents saying like, you went to school for something else, so I don't think it's like that a good choice for you to do this. But I kind of put in my mind to want to like just prove her wrong a little bit, but just to show her that I can make some money. I can make money off of farming. I can make a living to where that I'm it's like decent. I'm not super rich, but I'm also not struggling. At the end of the day, if I can grow enough food to feed myself, I think that's like kind of what I started out with. Like, I don't need to be super successful. I just want to be able to feed myself, and seems like where food comes from, that's just that was like my main motivation to be able to do that, to live sustainably and just live to where I can just kind of be by myself and not have to worry about if I'm going to find some food the next day or paying rent, So for me, like, owning land is not so much as important as being able to having access to it and cultivating it. So I think that was one of the problems I faced, was just having land. And through VEGGI, I was provided a little bit of land, but to be honest, like doing the logistics of the farm, I'm just in charge of a lot. So at the end of the day, I get less time to focus on farming, but it's still like a start to where I had access to this land that I could use. I could watch people grow and see how they're doing it. And like all my elders that are there on the farm, they just like showed me a lot. So it was just, I guess, making this decision to do that. But you're going to face, people that don't think that it's going to be the right thing for you. But at the end of the day, I just felt like it was right. And I think when I focus on growing my own food, it just makes me very happy. So that's, if I'm able to do that, that's like the ultimate goal.
Thanks so much for that. How about you, Alisha?
So it was very easy to start farming for someone else. It was easy to like go and start learning and cultivating skills on someone else's land, under someone else's direction, and be paid a wage. And it was much more challenging when my now husband and I decided, okay, it's time to break ground and buy equipment and try to sell this stuff. And I luckily did not really face the challenge of trying to figure out the market, because I had already been selling in the market that we wanted to sell in for another farm. And so the hardest thing for us was like, and for me in particular, was I was still working for another farm while we started the new farm. So trying to balance the issue of continuing to bring in income to meet all my financial needs while trying to start our own business. And I had no business education, zero. And so that has been an ongoing challenge for me. And, my husband doesn't work on the farm anymore. He has a full-time off-farm job. And so over the course of our almost 5 years in business, we've evolved a lot. It went from him working full-time on the farm and me being part-time for our business to now I'm working full-time on our business and he's away. And so it's like the biggest challenge for me that's ongoing is a mental health one, where I'm spending time by myself. I'm trying to stay motivated and get all these things done and stay on track and make, in the trench decisions every single day, and finding labor to do that is a challenge. I mean, I have someone that's helping me part-time, and that makes all those other things run a little more smoothly. But then, you know, I'm having to manage an employee too. So that's another challenge. It's like, I have had very little management experience in my life. And so that was another new challenge. But I feel like that's just something that comes with being a business owner, and like getting those skills, developing those skills. Just as time goes on, you're like adding each of those new things. And, but trying to find like a local mentor farmer was kind of hard, because we primarily focus on growing cut flowers. There's only like one grower in our immediate area that we could rely on for good reference information on crop timing and, you know, variety selection and stuff like that. So that was definitely another one. And I think that that is a barrier that a lot of new farmers face, because if you're not from an area that you've decided to farm in, you don't necessarily know the local landscape. You're not connected to the community in a way that gives you that information. And I feel like that is like the most valuable thing that you can do as a new farmer, is to like be connected to the community that you want to grow in, so that you're not just on an island. And, you know, the saying about that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, well, it's all the time in farming like that, because if you need land, if you need compost, if you need access to equipment, all those things are easily connected through community. So I don't feel like land access was a barrier for us. Finding good land access is difficult. You know, it's taken us 4 years to get to decent land. But it was really great to be able to start building our business and building our skills on land that we didn't have to pay for, you know, in the same way that you do when you have a mortgage, which we do now. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
That's awesome. And I think you bring up a really amazing point that also I heard, you know, Jonathan say earlier too, which is like, not everyone's going to have like these challenges to some degree. And I think especially in a lot of rural communities, like equipment's not hard to come by if you're from there, and land's not hard to come by if you're from there. And I'm not even saying like for a lot of money, right? Like there are ways that you can make these things happen if you're, you know, embedded in community in rural areas. And so those challenges shift depending on where you are. And certainly if somebody, you know, moves to New Orleans out of nowhere, it's going to be a totally different financial situation for them to find 5 acres near the city than it is for somebody who's in their hometown. And so we definitely, I'm always interested hearing, you know, what people's individual challenges are, because they are so vastly different. Allison, would you share with us your thoughts?
Yeah, I think all the points y'all made were great, really good points. And I think, I guess like for a general thing, I would say for new farmers going into it, I think a big challenge, like kind of to Jonathan's point, like you don't necessarily need a lot of land, you don't necessarily need a lot of money, but you do need the know-how. It's knowledge intensive work. And it's like a trade. I think like you should go into market gardening like it's any other trade, like it's a welder, like you're a craftsman or craftswoman, you know, like you're a carpenter or anything like that. And so I just feel so indebted to the people that we worked under. I mean, including you, Marky. You taught me how to garden. And like you know, you were my first, you know, you really did. It was first little community garden. But seriously, everybody that took time to teach me, I teach my husband, we did internships, formal internships on farms for at least a year at a time for each one. And to see that full year of production somewhere, I think is really valuable. And yeah, there are all kinds of like individual challenges that you'll face with whatever your situation is as far as getting land or money or whatever. But one thing that Grant and I saw Grant's my husband, when Grant and I were setting up the farm is that's a whole other skill set, setting up a farm, putting in irrigation, electricity, drainage, which you don't really get trained on farm. But once we got actually down to planting, harvesting, washing and packing, selling at market, it was like, we're good, no stress, basically. And so that's what I would encourage new and beginning farmers is to, if you can, if you're in the life stage where you can go and intern on farms, that's awesome. If you're not, like, make friends with anybody that's growing. Yeah, your community people are some of the biggest resources out there. And so buddy up with someone that you like and is growing anything if you can't do a formal internship. And so anyway, yeah, it's a very knowledge intensive kind of career.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I feel like we have this panel of people who are like deeply passionate about farming. So I think I have an inclination that the next question will be smooth, but I want to know what keeps you doing what you're doing, right? So that we have those like upfront challenges. And I think one of the things that we haven't really touched on are like, what are the day-to-day challenges? And we'll get to that, but we all know that there are many, right? Alisha, I think you said something along the lines of like, it's not this sort of pastoral image that a lot of people have. We have those moments where we're harvesting in the field at sunrise and it's the most beautiful thing that you've ever seen. But then there are days where you're getting rained on and, you know, someone yells at you and someone doesn't show up, right? So there's really hard stuff too. What keeps you doing what you're doing when it's really hard? Alisha, would you take it away?
Sure. So this is the one question of the like main panelist questions that I was like thinking the most about because it's so hard to answer concisely. But I think one of the first things that keeps me going is my husband. He is my biggest cheerleader, to be really honest, because literally it doesn't matter what time of day it is. If I call him on the phone or he gets home late from work and I want to talk about farm stuff, he's on it. He is just as passionate as me, maybe more so, honestly. And so he is like the battery for what keeps me like getting a jump start every day. But the other thing that really keeps me going is that every day is different. Every single day is different. There may be a few things that are similar from day to day, but every day is going to bring some kind of new challenge, something that you need to problem solve. And that keeps me interested and focused and moving forward. Because there's always some project in the background that needs to be worked on. There's always, you know, something that needs to be planted or a new weed has popped up that I need to identify, you know, whatever it might be. But so that's number two. And number three is literally the people, all the people. So everything from market customers, restaurant customers, women that I've done the flowers for their wedding, like sending me pictures like a year later on their anniversary because they're so excited, you know, and you don't get to interact with people in the same way, in such a personal way, in so many other careers and industries. And I mean, I feel like that's all super fluffy, but I also really don't mind getting dirty. Like, I love equipment. I love to be on a tractor. I love to be like walking behind my walk behind tractor and like trying to figure out a new tool that we can use for something other than its an intended purpose, you know. So yeah, I love a diesel engine for sure.
Amazing. How about you, Tom? What keeps you going?
Yeah, for me, I think my end goal is to have my own farm. So right now I'm not there yet. So that's what kind of pushes me to continue working. So that's what I do. I at the moment I commute 3 times a week to my farm. That's like 2 hours driving 3 times a week. You know, it's over 300 something miles, and on top of that, I'm doing deliveries. So I definitely have motivation to work. So because I'm always on the road, doing a lot of getting produce from here to there to connecting the farmers. So I think the relationships that I've built with restaurants and with market customers, it's just something that I really enjoy. I never saw myself as somebody really outspoken or talking a lot and being open, but it just kind of came naturally, I think, just with talking about passions for food, for plants. And so if I can engage people with those topics, it's just, it seems really natural. So it just helps me to continue going. And my end goal is to have my own farm. So that's what I'm working towards. And I'm not there yet, but it's just, it's also, I don't feel it as much as work when I get to spend those days to work on myself and the land. At the moment, I don't own the land, but so I'm just, my friend has some land that they're letting me use. So I just kind of see it as a blessing, to where that's like one less thing I have to worry about, you know, so I could totally just focus on growing and building up my dreams. So I guess that's what keeps me going every day.
Awesome. And Tom is such like food system glue in New Orleans. You connect so many people and get things from place to place, and just like kind of keep us all like talking. And so I see that passion that you bring to it every day. How about you, Jonathan?
Very similar to everybody. I mean, I love the work. It's physical, it's athletic, but at the same time, it's super intellectual, super complex, problem solving every day. We love the lifestyle it brings. I mean, our kids get to be growing up in the country. We don't have bosses. We don't have times that we have to be to and from work. We are able to make enough money to provide for our family. And then lastly, the people. I love people, and it's amazing what people share with you. It's almost like farmers are like counselors, where you get these insights, and it expands your worldview, because they reveal so many different people from different walks of life, socioeconomic statuses, reveal their personal thoughts. And so, you know, you understand the world better.
And also, yay for no bosses. I love that. Allison?
I think what everybody said, just totally, I agree with everybody. And yeah, it's the people, customers, you know, like talking about like knowing your markets and stuff like that. We kind of joke that like stroller pushers are like, we want the stroller pushers, you know, but what I mean is like, it starts when they're like, when they're pregnant, you know, and they're like, hey, I'm getting super serious about what I'm eating. We've seen it over and over. Super serious about what I'm eating. I love your stuff, whatever. And then they come back and it's like, your carrots were the first carrots my child has tried. And then we see the kid grow up and through the years. And so like that community connection, oh my gosh. And I've thought it so many times about how amazing it is, especially when you're selling at market, for people to say over and over and over and over again, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate you guys so much. You know, over and over. I don't know a job where every week you're told 20 times that people appreciate you, you know, and keep doing what you're doing and cheering you on. And it might be 20 different people every week. And so the people, definitely the new challenges. I like having, kind of flexing different parts of my personality, I guess, or something like that. And it allows me to be dynamic. And I like that a whole lot. And same thing with Jonathan, like we have 2 kids now, and it's really, really fun to see, especially my 3.5-year-old want to come into the garden and know which plants rosemary and thyme, and harvest our herbs for the pasta for dinner, and you know, all those little things are huge. And I mean, like, it sounds like all of us, we're just totally in love with it, and so it's kind of a love affair as well.
Amazing. So we know you guys, we know about your passion, we know like why you do what you do. And so we have a lot of questions about from participants and past participants about, oh, really quickly before we move in, another personal question. We've been asked by a participant if everyone would just say kind of how much space they're farming on, you know, in acres or in square feet if you're not on acre level. So we'll go backwards. Allison, how about you?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mention at the beginning. Good question. We started on 1/2 an acre, and then we've expanded, and now we could have like 1.5 acres in production, but really it's just like right over 1 acre. And we focus on vegetables, particularly known for like spring mix, baby greens.
The spring mix people in Baton Rouge. Jonathan?
We generally use about 4 to 5 acres for production through the year. Yeah.
Awesome. Tom?
Currently, the cooperative, we collectively grow on like less than 1 acre, right around there. And personally, I grow like in my backyard right now in the West Bank where I'm currently living. But in the North Shore, I also right now it's maybe less than 1/2 acre. I'm usually using the land for chickens a lot, and then just plants is less than 1 acre for myself.
Awesome. And Alisha?
So I'm growing on about 1/4 acre at this point, and I'm expanding out like in cover cropping about another 1/4 acre at this point. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Okay, so we're moving into the nitty gritty, like the technical stuff that these folks are here to, you know, I think we had talked before this call started. We have people with a breadth of different experiences as attendees. We have community gardeners, we have people who are interested in starting small farms, people who are already, you know, taking their first swing in a small farm. So I am gonna throw some of these questions to specific panelists. And the first one is, what kind of education and experience do you think is critical, is like actually needed to running a solvent small farm? And Alisha, you're smiling in a way that makes me want to call you. Oh, you're muted.
Okay, great. Sorry. So I think this is a really great question, and it's probably one that everyone asks themselves at the beginning of a decision-making process. Do I want to go into this career? How much work do I have to put in to like get there? And I was talking to my husband Jacob about this too, and I agree with him. Probably 4 or 5 years working on other farms, like at least 2 seasons on one farm. And that way you're seeing like multiple growing seasons in the same place. And if you feel like you need more experience, like on a different style farm, moving on to another farm for another couple years, or even working at one farm for that whole time period. That way you get really comfortable. You really get to develop skills. You really can develop a relationship with the farm that you're working for and get into their books. Like, you know, get into that nitty gritty information that you are going to need to run a business. And I really, on that note, think that business education, financial training, developing, you know, that muscle and skill set are so important. But getting as much experience as you can. I don't really think that you need a college degree to be a farmer. And one of my professors told me that exact line while I was at LSU. And it's so true, because if you are a bright, educated person that is self-motivated and loves to learn and read, that will get you very, very far, because you don't just stop learning when you get out of school. To be a farmer, you need to continue to educate yourself. So getting, hooked up with a growers organization, like we are registered with ASCFG, which is the cut flower growers organization, just so I really think, just to wrap it up, as much experience as you can on other farms in as similar of a climate as you want to be farming in is crucial. So that's it.
As a person with a degree in farming, I can attest there are other ways to learn.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give a second for, I'm not going to throw that full question to someone else, but if they heard something that they either want to say, I emphatically agree with that, or I have a different take. Is there anybody? Yeah, Jonathan.
I have, I had none of those things. So we've done it. So I'm just speaking to someone who doesn't have any of those options. We had no experience farming in Mississippi. We had no experience farming at all. And we just jumped in. And it was sink or swim. And we've been 10 years. So it can be done. But I agree with Alisha that those things are those are good, positive things to do before you start. But it can happen if you don't do those things.
And I do want to just say, this is just my opinion. This is just my opinion. It is not a rule. I am a human being. I am not a know-all being. And so you definitely have to figure out what's going to work for you in your situation.
But with everything Alisha was saying, I'm like, yes. But I did do the traditional, we did do the traditional internship apprentice route. And like I said before, so many times I'm like, oh, I'm so thankful I can call Jay and ask him this question, or I'm thankful that I did QuickBooks with Deanna or whatever. So I think that's great. There's no one way to do it for sure. And I think you got to have, Jonathan, I think it kind of, to your credit, it takes some, probably took extra tenacity, stick-to-itness, looking in, doing your research on your own. I think that's, I don't know you, but I imagine that that speaks to your character and your wife's character too. So I think if you've got if you're willing, it's basically what's your time frame? Are you, like you were saying at the beginning, are you willing to put in the time and just realize hey, it's going to take some time to learn? Or if you're willing, if you don't want to if you want to get up and running as quick as possible on your own thing with as little risk as possible, if you're really risk averse, then maybe spending time and working on farms, definitely over a degree.
And I want to ask Tom, where you fall on this spectrum. And also I want to say, I just think that there is something to where you are in your life as well. My first season farming, which actually just to reconnect the web. And I know I'm the moderator, but I do want to answer this question. Was I grew flowers for Allison and Grant's wedding, and I didn't have the business chops. I had the farming chops, and I didn't have that, I didn't understand that I was an entrepreneur, the magic of farming that lived in me.
You wouldn't even give me a number to chart, to pay you. I didn't make up a number to pay you.
Yeah, so there you go. And I do think some people are, if you're the kind of person that learns how to fix your car on YouTube and you've done that correct, you do that correctly every week, you might be the person who's ready to jump in farming. And if you're sort of meticulous, you might want to learn. I took up a lot of space there. Tom, what do you think?
So personally, for me, was how I got into the farming was just I guess can you repeat the question? I kind of lost track with the sorry. Yeah, to be honest.
Repeat the question.
Yeah.
Question like, so everybody's kind of weighed in on how much experience they feel like someone needs to have before they like start farming full-time as their business. And so we've heard everything from like 4 to 5 seasons on a farm in your region to like, throw yourself into the fire and like, be baptized by the dirt, and kind of where on that spectrum, or take it further. Where are you with that?
Yes. So, let's see. I don't think that, I think just the motivation to like eat healthy. That's one of the things for me was the getting into for farming. And how, and to be able to work with the community, I think what I was able to do with VEGGI, just like having land to work on access. So being able to volunteer with them, that's how I started first. And I just kind of wanted to show myself that I could able to learn a different trade from what I was doing before. I work with multimedia and like just like visuals. So transitioning from farming, just something totally new. I've always had a particular interest in it. So I could remember like way back in science for elementary school, I wanted to work with plants. So I just had these experiments to see what plants would do in different conditions. But during those times for those projects, you only had like a couple of weeks or less than a month. So now that I've had the chance to do it and to farm, to be able to see what long-term it is. So it's a process that's it was able to allow me to take more time to see how plants developed and like where I could find my niche into like making money to do this. So right now it's a process still. So I'm always still learning different things every day. If I come across something that I'm interested in, or plants or vegetables, I'll just try to dive deeper into it. So yeah.
Microphone.
Okay. We're getting this question a couple times in the chat, and I think I want to address it because I think it is so important, especially where we are in developing new farmers, which is people are asking about internships and apprenticeships. And I'm going to sort of appeal to our farmers to talk about those like real brass tacks of what you need from someone to start that relationship, because we're getting, at Sprout, we're getting emails every day about people wanting different types of internships or apprenticeships, all the way from one day, one time, one Wednesday for 4 hours to like, I'm ready to move onto a farm and live my life there, but this is what I need to make. And I think this is a really complicated question about labor and about money and about, I think there's just a lot to unpack here about like our time and what it's worth and what we can pay people for it. And it seems to me to be the least illuminated part of the new farmer experience. Because we're just encountering so many people who are thinking, if I wanted to learn how to be a baker, I would go find a stage. And why is that something that I'm having a really hard time with doing in becoming a farmer? So Alisha, would you kick us off and talk about what that means for you, what that would be like for you, and then also your kind of bigger picture, thoughts?
As far as my farm is concerned, I really can only afford to have one person part-time right now, because I'm making like heavy investments financially in the farm infrastructure. But as far as that goes, I mean, she comes like 10 to 20 hours a week, and so it's not a huge investment if you just want to work part-time with a farm, that you want to learn and develop some skills, but you don't have a whole lot of time to commit. If your schedule's a little bit flexible, then you can work it out. And I'm sorry, what else am I answering? Maybe about interns. Our interns are something that we have talked about before. We are just trying to figure out a way to house people so they can actually live on the farm. And in that situation, I think it's really important to like for interns to have their own private space so that you're able to have your own life and your own routine, and you're not completely entrenched in the farmer's life. But some people, you know, love having interns live in their house as a farmer, and that's just that's part of their personality, but that's not mine. And I learned that very quickly. But I think internships for like ATRA, I know it's like kind of old school to go ATRA, but ATRA is a nonprofit listing site for farms to list internships that are available. And some of them are paid and some of them are not paid. And I definitely advocate for paid internships because you are using your body and your brain, and you need to be compensated for that. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Jonathan, what are internships like for Amorphous?
Never had an intern. This is it's a great topic because it's very complicated for farms our size and smaller, employees or interns. I've always felt the belief, we've never had an employee, that I want to pay an employee a livable wage if we have an employee. And we've never had that opportunity. We've never made enough money where I felt like we could grow the farm or change the farm in a way where 7 or I's labor could be decreased by another person's labor. We live in a location where paid or unpaid interns or help, really, we've never had it. It's rural. No one's interested in that where we live. But in terms of payment of employees, I think it's a topic that a lot of small farms don't talk about because we're very critical of the way that larger farms do business. But I've seen many, many farms our size go in ways of using labor that I find inappropriate if we're going to be critical of other ways of farming. So it's a very pertinent topic.
Yeah. Allison, how about you?
Yeah, so we are in Baton Rouge and pretty close to, we're in the city. And so, and 10 minutes from LSU, and like I was saying, I got my master's there and helped teach a class that I know Margie and Alisha and I all took, 25-25 horticulture, organic gardening class. And so I have been really lucky to have access to students. So on our farm, we do have people that help. We categorize them 3 ways: volunteers, interns, or apprentices. So volunteers sounds, like no commitment, come out, we're not paying you for sure. Interns is what we call LSU students that can get class credit. They do an internship on our farm. And so that's been a great partnership for us. We've probably had maybe like over 5, less than 10 interns that have come through and gotten class credit for working on the farm. And then apprentices, we're on our 2nd apprentice, and apprentice is like what we think of as what we completed on farms, which is more traditionally called an internship. But we're calling it an apprenticeship to say that that means we want a year commitment from the person. You got to be on for the whole year because we take a whole lot of training on the front end and they're so not useful at the beginning. And we pay them. And we want at the end of it, the goal at the end of it is that they are ready to start their own farm. So that means that we're really pouring into them. We're going through books that we like together. We're getting to show them every part of the farm. So that's how we do it. And we have a lot of demand for people wanting to do apprenticeships or anything. And we always just say, like, listen, we got a demand, and the foot in the door is volunteering. So come out, volunteer, see if we're a good fit, personality wise, and if you like the work, and then we kind of go from there. But if people are in Baton Rouge and want to come out, and we're here, and I think getting people connected, and even just somebody isn't going to farm, but just, I don't know, even just putting a little time on the farm can give you a good perspective, even if you don't want to farm. So we're open to having people out.
Tom, any thoughts on this topic that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So like working the market, I get a lot of people that are interested in checking out the farm. You know, maybe they came across the VEGGI co-op through like some like a television program or a commercial. It's just we kind of have a small presence there because of our story, you know, background with our Vietnamese growers. But as far as like, we usually try to coordinate that with a large group because our staff is really, really small. It's basically just me and one other person. And it's hard for us to coordinate like so many individuals that want to come out on the farm. So we try to get everyone there on one day or to, and then most of our farmers are like a first generation Vietnamese immigrants. So they don't really speak that much English. So it would have to be like me or the other staff person to be out there to like talk to volunteers, kind of be the translator between the people that come visit and like the farmers themselves. And like for me, if somebody wants to volunteer, I usually, or want to contribute, I would always ask them if they have like land that they want to grow on. You know, I would be willing to work with them to give them advice, you know, but I think the best way to just get knowledge is just to break ground and start planting seeds, you know, and see what pops up. And that's just the advice that I give to folks. But as like my general like practice is, if somebody's working for us or like volunteering their time, I feel like that's the most valuable thing that anybody has. So it's, I want to be able to compensate them for their time whenever they do, you know, have that available. So yeah.
That's awesome. And I think what I'm hearing, and anybody stop me if this is not what you meant to kind of, what the kind of bigger picture is meant to come together as, is that those experiences that are like really committed to being on a farm and learning that farm and getting into its books, those sort of life-changing, like prepare to start your own farm experiences, those are going to be really big commitments, and that farmers generally want, and I'll go out on a limb and say should be paying a wage for those, for that time in your life. And that anything shy of that is going to be something that you need to work out with an individual farmer, and that some farmers are not going to be able to take that sort of pop-in labor, because it might not have the cost benefit analysis of it might not work out for their operation. Some farmers might be in rural areas and they've never experienced that offer before. Or some farmers like Tom might be like, I'll show you how to grow on your land, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. So we have a whole spectrum of answers of what a farmer might say to you if you want to volunteer. But those apprenticeships I'm hearing from our panelists, those are really big commitments. Does that kind of jibe with what you guys are saying?
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So we had this whole list of questions we wanted to ask you guys. It's 7:03. I'm going to kind of quickly look at the ones that we're getting from this group, because I feel like answering the questions of the people that are right in front of us is probably the right move. So we've got, where did your startup funding come from? And like I said, you know, we have 7:15, and I'd love to kind of maybe, you know, be succinct on it. Allison?
Yeah, we started $30,000 is what we started with, and that was a combination of what we were able to save. We borrowed from my parents. We borrowed $10,000 from my parents, and we just had a little interest on the loan, and we just finished paying that off to them, and that's how we started. $30,000 bought, did our walk-in cooler, walk-behind tractor with the implements that we needed. A Grillo is what we got, and just miscellaneous tools. And then we made it back, you know, in the first year, you know, yeah. A lot of businesses, you got to remember, aren't in the black for 5 years or something like that. So, you know, with farming, you really don't need to get started with a whole lot, and you can make it all back the first year if you've got the know-how.
Awesome. Alisha?
Very similar situation for us. We had started with about $25,000, took out a secured CD loan through our bank, and so that gave us a few extra thousand, and actually paid that off the second year, you know. So we try to operate with no debt. We do have a credit card, but it gets paid off every month. And yeah, we have not had to take out any other loans or full, you know, from our own savings to like float the farm in any kind of way, because I really believe in, you know, making the farm work for its dinner. So.
Jonathan?
Yeah, so basically what we did was we gave this, when we started, I was the stay-at-home dad, and so my wife's income was kind of like a subsidy. We gave the business $1,000, and then we just accumulated the money from the first 2 years and reinvested it back in the business, and by our third year, our farm was a primary income, and she quit her job. So it's a little different than the other two, but that's how we started our business.
Awesome. And then how about you, Tom?
Yeah, so VEGGI, like itself, what is when I'm working for the co-op, they started through like disaster relief funding. So that's like I can speak for that. I wasn't there for when it started, but like personally for me, I'm able through work through VEGGI, and I'm working towards building my own farm. So at the moment, what I get through my work with VEGGI is what I'm putting towards towards building my own farm. So it's not too much at the moment, but it's just I always try to salvage and use materials. So it depends, you know, on what I'm starting right now, because I can't really process like the whole cost I put into it. But it's just right now through my work with VEGGI is how I'm supporting my plan to move towards farming more.
Amazing. So this is a rapid fire one. What accounting software do you use? Alisha.
QuickBooks.
Oh, Allison, QuickBooks. Okay, Alisha.
Love it.
Jonathan,
I don't use one. I just use Excel.
You use Excel. That's very in keeping. You're a very organized person. You're an incredibly organized person.
Okay.
How about you? QuickBooks. And then Tom, how about you?
I think we do use QuickBooks as well, process for VEGGI.
I can't say enough about QuickBooks.
Yeah, QuickBooks Online specifically changed my world, changed it this year. Yeah, QuickBooks Online.
Okay, and so then we also had the question of, I think this is a huge one. How do you know when to, and I'm going to ask one person to answer this that feels compelled to, how do you know when to transition from part-time farming to full-time farming? Like, what do you think the moment you make that leap is? Anybody feel compelled on that one? I heard a really solid financial answer from Jonathan. It was when you guys were solvent, right? Yeah.
You're muted.
Oh, me? I am?
No, Jonathan won.
Oh, yeah.
No, I mean, I agree. Yeah. I mean, basically when we made enough money that we felt like we could do it, that's when we transitioned.
Yeah. That feels kind of like the most succinct answer is like, if you can survive on what you're making and you feel like the system of how you're making it is going to continue, it wasn't just a windfall, then get out there, right? Okay, and then let's just I'm like so excited. Okay. Here's one. So somebody asked, can a person realistically make a living in a backyard farm? Ooh, it's a divisive question in the agricultural.
I think so.
Tom says he thinks so. Okay.
What defines a backyard garden? How big is that?
That's
yeah, that's true too, you know.
And it depends on what's your cost of living. You know, it depends on a lot of things, but I mean, I thought about this, like there is a metric that's kind of going around with this kind of market farming, market gardening JM40A, those kind of people, where it's like 100,000 an acre. So if that helps, that's kind of the goal that we go for, is try to gross 100,000 an acre at least. And so whatever, if you're on a quarter acre, you'll do 25,000, you know, like that is a goal.
Right. And so then walking that back about your cost of living and saying, so if taking in $25,000 a year is enough for you.
And that's gross.
Yeah. So
that's gross for the business, right? So you've got your seed cost, you got costs in that. Yeah.
It really depends on your crop selection, I think, is the real, how your crop selection and, you know, how much land is your backyard, you know, because you can make a lot of money on 1/8 of an acre of flowers. Like, that's a solid, you know, income right there if you're doing it year round. So it's possible, but it is tight.
Yeah. Jonathan, do you have any thoughts on that?
No. I don't. I think it's possible if you put, it's possible. Yeah. It's possible.
Yeah. And I think, you know, like, that's a really interesting part of this is, Alisha, you said it early on, like, it's an opinion. There's somebody out there that can make almost anything happen. So, okay. We have 4 minutes left. I'm looking at like what we could maybe answer in that time. We have someone who asked about grants and if grants are a way to go. Does anyone want to weigh in about whether or not, like, kind of incorporating grants into your business model, is that
zero experience?
Yeah, no experience here either.
This is your wheel. Is maybe the VEGGI wheelhouse, huh?
Oh yeah, well, I actually do most of the marketing and logistics, so I don't handle the grant funding, but I get paid through grant funding as my work development. So it's definitely, there's resources to tap into, and you can there's so many grants available that it's worth a shot, and I wouldn't be deterred to try, you know.
Awesome. So we've got, I think, probably opening up another question is not the move. I do want to say, are there any thoughts that y'all want to leave us with? So farmers, I won't call on you. I'll let the spirit move you. Is there anything that you'd like to say to all of these people, you know, of all ages, of all backgrounds, who are considering engaging with farming?
I would say do it. And do whatever you can where you are, and if it's something that you're passionate about, like, don't let there always can be obstacles in your way, and don't let those obstacles stop you if that's what you really want to do. And start small and do a few things well and go from there.
Beautiful. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think you just also should grow what you want to eat, you know, and take lots of breaks. It's you're gonna need it, especially during the hot summer. But as you work with plants more, you kind of start to adopt their rate and rhythm. So you're going with what they need, and you yourself, breaks are necessary, and they'll refuel you.
And I just want to say, if you're thinking about farming, you should be continuing to always educate yourself. Like, read as much as you can, like, do as much research as you can, you know, before, during, always, because it's just going to help inform you. And thinking that you're going to get into farming and it's going to be a cakewalk is not realistic. You know, really want to hit that home, because this is hard, you know, and not every single day is hard, but there's always going to be a challenge that would easily crumble someone with less resolve than you. And you just have to be that person that has the resolve to work through it and keep going. And if you have that, then do it. You know, don't wait. like Allison said, do what you can where you are, but don't give up.
Welcome back, Marcus.
Hey, everybody,
and get
this
good
has been
farming
awesome.
friends.
Yeah,
Get
good
farming friends.
Or something I want to say as we close, something Tom and I say, talk about all the time is like farm together.
Yeah, always.
Certainly. We would like to thank everyone for attending this evening's webinar, and shout out to all of our panelists for providing such great information. Getting into farming and starting in being a startup farmer can be a difficult process. And so we hope that something that the panelists shared tonight has been helpful to some of the attendees. This is the first part of a 3-part webinar series. Our next webinar will be Growing Your Farm Business. That will take place on Tuesday, November 10th at 6 p.m. We'll make sure that we get that registration information out to all of the attendees tonight. We will have another set of great farmers from the area that will be participating in that webinar. And again, thanks everybody for attending, and thank our panelists, and we'll wrap up for the evening.